This is the second case I want to make for how do I know that the Bible is true, and it is that you're longing, people need, you want this, but human beings actually need what I'll call a meta-narrative that ultimately matters. And ultimately means it doesn't matter what the rest of the world attacks it. Our story, because that's what meta-narrative is, our grand story. Meta means big and large and grand, of overarching all things, and narrative is obviously story. Our grand story ultimately matters no matter how much you attack it. And it's a good story. It's filled with hope. So even if we are going through something extremely painful and are oppressed or dying of cancer or being murdered by people who hate us, it doesn't matter. We have an unshakable hope. So that grand story is not offered just everywhere. All the other holy books of the Bible, of all the other religions, they don't have it. Actually, a lot of other religions and other religious worldviews only have tragedy. So let me just, the Bible offers you a grand story that ultimately matters, is filled with hope. And let me contrast this versus small, meaningless, and forgotten stories. So I said this in last week's sermon, actually, here in the Easter sermon, that apart from God or apart from, everlasting life, the resurrection, your life is short and pointless. That isn't just true about your individual life. It is true about whole nations and whole civilizations. I mean, does anybody, know what Assyrian theology is? What was their religion? What were their gods? But the Assyrian Empire was, at its time, the greatest and most mighty. It was the superpower of its time. But nobody cares about their God. Nobody cares about their grand story. Nobody cares about narratives, the narrative of the meaning of what they think life is. And I won't try to go too much into this. Everybody needs a meta-narrative. Human beings absolutely must have meta-narrative. You cannot understand the meaning of your life unless it's placed inside of a bigger story. So you can only begin to see if your life is doing well, the story of your life, inside of a bigger story, the meaning of a bigger story, and then you can understand if that story has a happy ending or a bad ending, which our earlier ages said happy ending meant comedy, Shakespeare. Bad ending is tragedy, again, Shakespeare, okay? And mostly a lot of the other world, religions and worldviews, they believe in tragedy. They don't even believe the story's going to end well. The Norse gods don't even think, they actually think all the evil will destroy the good gods and it ends bad. So they actually have, that's a pretty powerful vision of sin in their world, that they think it's going to come out. So when I talk about small, meaningless, and forgotten stories, America would just seem like if I just have a comfortable little 80 or 90 or 100 years of my life, then I had a good life. But most people actually can't do that. A lot of people cannot do that. Maybe if you grew up rich and you were good looking and you were healthy, everything worked out great for you, and you could feel good about that. But what about everybody who doesn't have that? And even if you do have that, somewhere along the line, it probably is going like, this story is not very meaningful. So then you need a bigger story, the meta-narrative question. So all pagan life narratives and all secular life narratives, they all land here, meaningless and forgotten. Okay? The other thing that I want to point out is you need a grand meta-narrative that contrasts versus what I call circular futility. So again, outside of the West believes in a linear view of history. So it goes from here, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's linear. Like you can track this, track the line. That's what the Bible teaches. The Bible has a linear understanding of history. The Indians and Chinese don't. They basically believe in cycles, or what scholars have called a circular view of history. You know what it is? We tried to do this, it started to do well, then we won our enemies, and then we got corrupt, and then our enemies destroyed us, and then everything was forgotten and lost. Oh, and then the cycle started all over again. And whole theologies are built this way. Hinduism is built on cycles of reincarnation. You live this life, and you live this life, and you live this life. Some was good. Oh, then you climb up the caste. What's really interesting, you get to the top of the caste, and that's not a happy ending because there's no ending. It's actually what they're wanting is to get out of this system. Nirvana is to get out. So it's circular. History, your individual life is circular, but the whole like the meaning and story of your whole civilization has circular futility. And so Eastern worldviews are like this, and basically all non-biblical visions of history that end in tragedy, and then you just repeat. That's just another version of it. So the Bible has something totally different. It actually has a linear history. It starts off good, and then it falls into something bad. And so I'll give you the major pieces of the biblical meta-narrative. It's creation, it is fall, it is redemption, and then it is resurrection. Or some people would say, recreation, or some people use the word consummation. Okay? Creation, fall, redemption, recreation. All Christians, you read the whole Bible and you can see, it doesn't matter what denomination you believe. You're like, that's our story. That's the big, grand meta-narrative story. And it is a powerful and profound story. It is deeply meaningful. It's so meaningful that every little thing you do in your life has ramifications out toward eternity. And it doesn't matter if you are living in an evil period where you are oppressed, you're kicked around, you're abused, you're raped, you're murdered, you're exploited, but you still matter to God. And you will go through death, but then there's resurrection. That's why Easter, here we go, Easter. And so I'll just give you two verses. It's right at the beginning and the end of the Bible. Genesis chapter 3:15 is when God says the gospel for the first time. And he actually is cursing Eve, but then he actually says the gospel. And he says there'll be one that's born from you who will crush the serpent's head. The serpent will, bruise his heel. And so that's the first time the gospel is actually said. Okay, it's called the theologians call it the proto-evangelium. Evangelium. And evangelium means gospel, proto means first, the first time the gospel was said. So it's already, God sets that in motion right there, and he says that, Genesis 3:15, right after the fall. And Revelation 21:1-4 is this absolutely glorious place when it's the new heavens and the new earth, and God dwells with his redeemed in the city of God, and it says there'll be no more tears and no more pain. So when we're talking about hope, we're not just talking about wishful thinking. To a Christian, that's mine. That's absolutely, nothing can stop that from happening. And Revelation 21:1-4 is my destiny. It is our destiny. This is where we're going. So even if we feel like we're losing, and it's really, really bad, and it's really, really painful for us right now, that's where we're going. And so this is what enables Christians to be able to withstand and persevere. And for any kind of people group, not just individual, you in your individual life, you need some power to persevere and have courage and steadfastness to continually seek justice and love. But for a whole people group, how can you do this unless they have a huge story? And here we go. The Bible alone provides a linear meta-narrative ending with an eternal, unshakable hope that can withstand and overcome any suffering, death, loss, injustice, oppression, and evils of this life and history. A lot more Jews, like you asked this question about Jews and the Holocaust, they would do a lot better at being able to handle the evil of the Holocaust. This absolutely horrendous, tremendous evil that happened in the 20th century to them if they read the Bible. They would find out that that's not some strange outlier, and God has been there for them even through other horrible atrocities in their history. It's right there inside of their meta-narrative. Okay?